We should be live any second now, and you should be audible if I'm not dumb.
Then I am definitely audible.
Yeah, you totally should be. Your mic, it got picked up. Your audio got picked up on the what's it called?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
Oh, what are you asking, Lisa? How, where, what? Chicago. If you're asking where this stuff was happening, it's Chicago, I think. Is it? I don't know if it's just
Yeah.
limited to Chicago, but that's the main place where
Yeah.
it's where I saw it was being talked about. In
Yeah,
this
because it's
case,
for
at
the
least.
northern. Yeah, it's for the Northern District of Illinois, which is Chicago.
And then we're starting on page 10, right?
Um, unless you want to. Well, you said you wanted to go over the introduction too, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we can do that. There we go. And now it's visible.
Okay. So, just to sort of get us started, um, the people that are the plaintiffs in this class action lawsuit, which has been filed in U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Illinois Eastern Division, so Chicago,
Yep.
um, is against. So the plaintiffs are Pablo Moreno Gonzalez, Felipe Agustin Zamacona, and a class of similar situated people. So that's why it will say that, like, oh, this a similarly situated, etc. Versus Kristi Noem, Secretary of the U.S. Department of Homeland Security in her official capacity, Todd Leons, Acting Director of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in his official capacity, Marcos Charles, Acting Executive Associate Director of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Removal Operations in his official capacity, Samuel Olson, Interim Chicago Field Office Director of the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement in his official capacity, Gregory Bavino, Commander at Large of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection in his official capacity, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement as an entity, U.S. Customs and Border Protection as an entity, and the Department of Homeland Security, which would be the defendants. So do you want to read the beginning?
Yeah, since these are shorter, we should probably do, if you want, we can switch off like last time, but we should probably do every two so that we're not switching off so soon and it holds us up more than it makes us get
Okay,
along.
so I'll let you
In
start.
Federal authorities are conducting a massive and inhumane immigration enforcement operation in the Chicago area. Operation Midway Blitz. Under defendants' authority, huge numbers of people are being arrested and detained. Most have been brought to what is being used as a de facto immigration detention facility right outside the city limits. The Broadview ICE facility at 1930 Beach Street, Broadview, Illinois. Broadview, where defendants are perpetrating mass constitutional violations. Broadview is meant to be a holding facility, a way station where people are briefly held for processing before being moved to a long-term detention facility. Historically, people were held for a few hours in the holding cells that occupy a portion of the first floor. But in the wake of Midway Blitz, defendants are now warehousing people at Broadview for days on end. The consequences have been dire and wholly predictable.
Now, it's important that they did use that word, or probably they did use that phrase in that clause, and wholly predictable, because
Yeah.
it is with that then you can establish intent, right? If it's wholly predictable, then they can't say, oh, well, it happened by accident. We had no clue this was going to happen. Instead, it's, again, wholly predictable. So that means if they're doing it and they've been they've been doing it even though they've been asked not to, right? That goes towards establishing intent. So,
Hello, Isom. This is not
hello,
the what's it called? The piece on the West
Human Rights
Bank.
Watch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on the West Bank. This is a case in the I forget the name of the entire court, but it's in Illinois. It's in Chicago. Is where these where like these incidents have happened, where ICE has been unlawfully detaining people. And as we were skimming through, there seems to be like not adequate access to food and water, not adequate sleeping arrangements, etc. Stuff like that is what this is going to be about. If things go well, um, that should be Sunday though. If everything works out, otherwise it'll definitely be next week. Sometime next week.
Okay. And if people have questions, please, or comments as well, please feel free to put them in the chat. So 3, plaintiffs and putative class members are immigration detainees who have been arrested by officers operating under the defendant's command. They are being confined at Broadview inside overcrowded holding cells containing dozens of people at a time. People are forced to attempt to sleep for days, sometimes weeks, on plastic chairs or on filthy concrete floors. They are denied sufficient food and water. They cannot shower. They are denied soap, hygiene items, and menstrual products, and they have no way to clean themselves. They are often denied a change of clothes. Temperatures are extreme and uncomfortable. And I will note just really quickly, when it says most nights are freezing cold, it's only gotten colder. Like it's been snowing in Chicago for a while now, so
Yeah.
it's already, yeah. Yet only some of them receive a thin foil blanket, a sweater, or sweatpants to try to retain warmth. The lights are typically on all night. These conditions result in widespread deep sleep deprivation for the putative class. Putative class members lack access to adequate medical care, even for pre-existing medical conditions. There is no medical intake when people are brought into the facility. Detainees are denied prescription medication even when it is dropped off by family members and cannot obtain routine medicines like aspirin or Tylenol. The physical conditions are filthy with poor sanitation, clogged toilets, and blood, human fluids, and insects in the sink and the floor. Due to the overcrowding, unhygienic conditions, lack of medical care, and deprivation of adequate food, the facility is a breeding ground for illness to spread.
I assume it is it's kind of really important that it's specified that it's not that just they're not prescription medication, it's prescription medication when it's given to the facility, and it's also not just prescription medications, it's even like simple things like Tylenol. it's
Right.
it's
And
it's 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 everything. It's not just.
right. And not only that too, but also just like a quick side point is the fact that the lights are on all night, like that is recognized as being criminal in and of itself, right? Because it's torturous
Yeah.
to leave the lights on to not allow people to properly sleep. So these people that have been there for weeks don't get any sleep.
Yeah.
They can't use any type of sanitation facilities, and so yeah.
Since let's see, since 6 is short, I'll read to 8.
Okay.
Privacy is non-existent. People are forced to use a toilet that is located inside their crowded holding cell, which in some cells are separated by a partial wall that affords almost no privacy, and in others is entirely unseparated from the rest of the cell. Officers keep watch through the windows in video surveillance. Large windows in the holding cell allow men to see the women when they use the toilet, and women to see the men. The federal officers who patrol Broadview under defendants' authority are abusive and cruel. Putative class members are routinely degraded, mistreated, and humiliated by these officers. Defendants know and intend that the conditions they have created in Broadview are resulting in the inhumane treatment of plaintiffs and the putative class members. Worsening these conditions, defendants have cut off detainees from the outside world. Defendants officers prevent people detained at Broadview from speaking with their lawyers or from obtaining a lawyer if they do not have one. Class members are blocked from making confidential phone calls to their lawyer or a prospective lawyer.
And I would like to highlight just quickly, and again, they're using very specific language because when they say in 7, defendants know and intend.
Yeah.
Right, is again establishing intent. So if it's wholly predictable, if it's something they know will happen and intend to happen, then then it becomes a separate matter, right? Because then it completely heightens, right, the charges placed against them. Another thing too is it doesn't really mention this in paragraph 5, but I would also like to note that it's also children as well being held here, right? Like if children are detained, they also don't get any privacy whatsoever. So, yeah, I'll just put that out there. And again, like denying their civil liberties and rights from being able to even get a public defender or something, right? Which is very much unconstitutional. Okay, so defendants prohibit detainees who are represented by attorneys from accessing their counsel, which could itself be an obstruction of justice charge as well, just noting that. If officers tell attorneys they cannot visit their clients, and attorneys who try to contact their clients inside the facility are rebuffed or ignored. Attorney telephone calls are sent to an unattended line, and their calls and emails go unanswered. The ICE online detainee locator fails to accurately reflect the location of individuals in defendants' custody so that attorneys cannot physically find their clients. And while Broadview contains attorney visit rooms, defendants do not use them for that purpose. Officers turn attorneys away at the facility gate and refuse to allow detainees to meet with them. The consequence of denying detainees access to counsel are grave. Federal officers at Broadview, operating under defendants' command, are coercing people to sign immigration paperwork that many detainees do not understand and that relinquishes their rights and purports to allow defendants to send detainees out of the country without ever seeing an immigration judge. Defendants are transferring people to distant detention facilities or sending them out of the country outright before their attorneys can locate them and intervene. Defendants are detaining immigrants without bond while preventing them from speaking with an attorney who could otherwise intercede and file a petition in this court or a bond motion in immigration court seeking their release. Some U.S. citizens arrested for protesting outside of Broadview have been interrogated without their counsel present.
Yeah, fucking insane. Really insane. Let's see, let me make sure I'm on the screen. Okay.
Yeah, it's a complete unconstitutional mess. I mean, it even goes against like humanitarian law. It's just even stuff that is on U.S. books. It's like it's like people like remember with the Mr. Beast thing, right? That he had some guy be in a room that where the lights were never turned off. It's like people were immediately like, that's a war crime, and it's just like, yeah, I mean, I don't want to necessarily use that language here, but it's like it's happening here as well, right? So, but anyway, just
You're way too quiet, Pippa. I'm just right. I am as loud as I will ever be. I didn't change anything. I didn't change a thing. I haven't changed any setting. I just wasn't talking very loud. That's all. Oh, Shakespeare's way too loud. I'll turn Shakespeare down. We can do that. We can work with that. There we go. That's hopefully better.
Yeah, hopefully.
We'll play it by ear. Okay. 12. Defendants have blocked access at Broadview not just for attorneys, but for others who have historically been granted entrance. These include members of Congress whose defendants have repeatedly turned away from Broadview despite Congress's explicit oversight authority over such facilities. It also includes faith leaders and members of the clergy who have provided religious services at Broadview for years but are now denied the ability to provide pastoral care under defendants' command. 13. By blocking access to detainees inside Broadview, defendants have created a black box in which to disappear people from the U.S. justice and immigration systems. Plaintiff Pablo Marino Gonzalez is an immigrant who was arrested in the morning or early afternoon of October 29th, 2025, while walking near West Foster Avenue and North Pulaski Road in Chicago, Illinois. He was subsequently taken to Broadview, where he is currently detained in the conditions described in this complaint. He is one of the many class members who are currently detained or who soon will be detained at Broadview and who will suffer the rights violation at issue in this case.
One thing to also kind of note as well is the fact that, they are even denying them things that are, you know, supposedly important for, like, the president and these people, right? Like, they like to be like, oh, super Christian nationalist and everything, but it's like they won't even let Christian clergy people, right? Like, let them inside in order to meet with their flock, right? To meet with the people inside. Like they're literally denying people's religious needs to be met. No, they deny pretty much. I mean, they don't even allow people that by definition are the people, like, with the oversight authority of the facilities in. So they don't allow, not even like they don't allow, well, they wouldn't allow Red Cross, and especially because it's an international organization. There's also that too. Um, what's important also is that this was filed on the 30th of October. So the fact that within that day, I hope no one passed away at last rites are important to Roman Catholics. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Uh, let alone like any other faith that might be represented as well. Um, so,
Oh, you
um,
said this was filed October 30th. So that means it was a day after um
yes,
uh Mr. Gonzalez was detained. That's crazy.
right, exactly. And I think that's an important thing to note, that like they came into the facility, or they will appear in the facility, will be detained, and immediately they wanted people that might be exposed to it, right? Just try to see if they could also find some form of relief, up front. So 15, plaintiff Felipe Agustin Zamacona is an immigrant who has been in the United States for over 30 years. He was arrested on the morning of October 30th, 2025 in Wheeling, Illinois. While working as a delivery driver, he was subsequently taken to Broadview, where he is currently detained in conditions described in this complaint. He is one of many class members who are currently detained or who will soon be detained at Broadview and who will suffer the rights violation at issue in this case. So I just want to note really quickly is that that's the reason why they included Mr. Gonzalez and also Mr. Samacona within this complaint, because it was filed in the evening. But the point being that um, anybody that like even sending someone to this facility would be a rights violation. Is what their argument is. right? So that's what's important to keep in mind. So 16, the conditions in Broadview are not an anomaly. Similar overcrowding, unsanitary conditions, lack of basic hygiene, insufficient food and water, inadequate sleeping conditions, substandard medical care, and extreme restrictions on attorney-client communications are pervasive at immigration facilities in New York, Baltimore, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Alexandria, and other cities throughout the country. I'll just finish it up, by the way. These conditions have given rise to multiple lawsuits putting defendants on notice that the conditions in the facilities they operate violate the law and ICE's own policies. Incommunicado detention is not tolerated in our democracy. Defendants have an obligation under the U.S. Constitution and federal law to provide the people they detain with due process and to treat them with basic decency. This case asks the court to enforce compliance with these obligations by ordering ready access to counsel and humane conditions of confinement. Plaintiffs ask this court to order defendants to stop flouting the law inside Broadview. And so one thing that's also important to mention here is the fact that they do say, again, to establish intent, right? Like to show that this is a pattern. The fact that they say it's not an anomaly, and then they cite other similar places where like other places that also have pending cases in federal court, right? Like at Los Angeles, etc. Or Portland, for example, is probably a quite well-known one, right? So in order for them to also make the cases that this is a systemic thing, it's not just, it's not bad apples, quote unquote, right? It's a systemic thing. So
Also, is are me and Shakespeare at about equal now? Is Shakespeare not too loud anymore?
and yeah, and yeah, Lisa, I can't imagine people having to go through any distress. I mean, the distress they are going through without any recourse or any, um, nor any like solace or comfort, right? Which is, again, part of the reason why these acts should be seen as, extreme, especially egregious, right? Considering.
I
So,
assume we're skipping to page 10 after this.
yes, skipping to page 10, which is the factual allegations themselves.
Factual allegations. A. Defendants' policies of mass arrests and mandatory detention have created crisis conditions at Broadview. Defendants have implemented immigration enforcement and mandatory detention policies that have greatly increased the number of immigrants arrested and detained in the Chicago area. Through a series of policy decisions, public statements, and actions on the ground, defendants have made clear that their overriding objective is to expel as many people from the country as quickly as possible, irrespective of constraints imposed by the Constitution, federal law, their own policies, or basic human decency.
Right. And one thing to sort of note on that is that they, in fact, were so. One thing, the way how the United States government has often gotten away with a lot of its mass deportations, right, and historically, has been that they didn't count people that self-deported, quote unquote, right? But the issue is like what that means, right? Is that they make the conditions of life so horrific for people that they have no choice but to leave. But those numbers are included, for example, for those of us that research this, and like I've mentioned on my own stream, right, with like since 1882 up until the publishing of the book Deportation Machine, which I believe was 2018, but I could be wrong. 57 million people had been deported from the United States, had been mass expelled, right? Essentially expelled from the United States, which is more than they've ever taken in, by the way. And also like and that's including the numbers that they often don't count, right? Because like they've said already recently in the news, and even the administration itself, that over 2 million people have self-deported, which would mean that the mass deportation of the 1930s, which was around 2 million as well, is now being surpassed by this one. So just to keep that in mind. On his very first day in office, President Trump issued an executive order outlining his immigration policies. The executive order characterized immigrants as invaders. And so it also cites, the specific one. It declared the government's policy.
Which I have to add, you don't even need to fucking read the actual text of it to get that that's what he means. Protecting the American
Yeah.
people against invasion. I was like, oh, okay, well, that'd be very interesting. I wonder what it says in the actual thing itself. But even in the title, it's like it's still doing that. You don't even need to go into it. It's already there.
Right. Right. Which is in a way, like in terms of international law and all these other things, it's like so explicit that it's almost like, unbelievably explicit in sometimes. It declared the government's policy of mass deportation, i.e., to achieve, quote, total and efficient enforcement, end quote, of laws against all, quote, inadmissible and removable aliens, end quote. Defendants effectuated the administration's order by pursuing increasingly exorbitant quotas for the number of immigrants to be arrested each day. I want to highlight that again. There's a quota for how many people are supposed to be arrested each day, not each week, not each month, each day. Initially, the administration imposed a target of 75 arrests per day for each ICE field office, including the Chicago ERO, or 1,200 to 1,500 arrests nationwide. Again, this would be per day. In mid-May, the administration more than doubled the quotas to 3,000 arrests per day.
So before it would have been like around 10,000 a week, and now it's 2,100 a week. And
You mean
that's
21,000?
yeah, sorry, yeah, 21,000 a week. Yeah, fucking crazy. It's a crazy amount of people.
Which, again, like if we're just gonna use this metric as the actual like number per week, right? That would mean that in 1 year you would have over 1 million people have been rounded up, essentially arrested.
Yeah, literally, yeah, all over fucking 1 million. Just fucking crazy.
Oh, I wonder how Levitt lives with herself. Well, the way how she did it was just by saying like it's her fault. Um, which is like, how do you do that to your own sister-in-law, right?
Yeah, yeah. DHS, ICE, and CBP. I don't know what CBP is. Oh,
Customs and Border.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I just realized. Have vastly broadened the categories of people whom they seek to arrest on civil immigration violations. They are detaining immigrants regardless of their criminal record, immigration status, or the status of their legal cases. Defendants are using these tactics in service of meeting the arrest quotas and in furtherance of the administration's mass deportation policy.
And also, just before you move on, I just want to note this recently happened where they decided to go after people who were on waiting, right, to do their swearing in as U.S. citizens, right, because they wanted to get them before they were sworn in as U.S. citizens.
That's
So they went to
crazy.
the court. Yeah, so they went to the courthouse or wherever it was. I forget exactly where, or the immigration site. And yeah, just as they were about to take their oath of being a naturalization, they arrested them. and along with anyone that was waiting in line to also um, to also
Was
you know fin-
I've I
Mhm.
have a question. Was this caught on video? I feel like I've seen something like
Yeah, it
this that
should
was
it should
caught. I think I saw
yeah
that. I think I saw that, or a case of that happening at least.
yeah.
I think Sunday showed it on one of his streams. I saw it somewhere.
Yeah, I could see that because he has talked about this somewhat. But yeah, like again, it was people waiting that already had everything approved, already had their background checks, all of the stuff done. Right? They've already paid all of this money, have already waited over 10 years, more than that actually, and still, like on the day of when they're, because then they, because once they become citizens, then, they can't, you know, play around with the law as much as they are right
Yeah.
now.
These actions have had a dramatic impact on immigration enforcement operations in the United States. Nationwide, from early January to June 2025, civil arrests of immigrants with no criminal records increased over 800%. Between January and May 2025, two-thirds of deportations were of people with no criminal record at all. As one ICE insider explained, all that matters is numbers, pure numbers, quantity over quality. That's fucking crazy. Two-thirds, just
Yeah.
literally no criminal record at all. Fucking in an 800% fucking increase. Easy.
And again, like remember, this was all premised on the we're only gonna focus on the quote unquote worst of the worst,
Yeah.
right? And it's like most of these people, uh what is it, Mr. So I just want to make sure that I say Samakona. He's been in the United States for 30 years, no criminal record, nothing. Like he's working, has kids, and he was taken to Broadview.
Yeah.
So to just keep that in mind. And I'll read the next couple, the next few. The vast increase of arrests has also resulted in the detention of more individuals than defendants have capacity to hold nationwide. Immigration detention facilities across the country were already at capacity by March 2025. And again, it's December 2025. So for the past 9 months, they've been over capacity, right? So just to keep that in mind, they've just been getting more full and more full and more full since then. Chicago and its surrounding suburbs have been particularly hard hit by defendants' enforcement policies and practices. In June 2025, ICE ramped up operations in the Chicago area. According to ICE data, from mid-January through the end of July 2025, ICE arrested 537 more people in Illinois than at the same time period in 2024, an increase of 59%. During that same period, ICE detained 3,182 people, more than it did during 2024, an increase of 185%. This was just the start. On September 6, 2025, President Trump threatened the city of Chicago with a federal takeover, posting an image on Truth Social entitled, quote, "Chipocalypse Now," end quote, which depicted President Trump in front of helicopters, a Chicago skyline in flames, and a caption stating, quote, "I love the smell of deportations in the morning. Chicago is about to find out why it's called the Department of War," end quote. On September 8th, 2025, DHS announced an escalated federal immigration action in Chicago called Operation Midway Blitz. And can we just talk about just how ridiculous that is? Like it's both ridiculous but also terrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna call it, Chipocalypse now, and then also saying like, oh, you know, they love the smell of deportations, but also it's gonna find out why it's called the Department of War when it's like the whole point of that is that it doesn't take actions against citizens, right? Like against the
Yeah.
civilian population of the country.
Yeah.
So
Genuinely insane. I don't.
I don't even know what to say about that.
No,
So
I
by
don't know. I don't know either. It's crazy that Trump is still taken somewhat seriously by people.
and that's why I never got the whole thing. It's like, well, he's funny. It's like, but he's not.
Yeah.
It's like people are like, well, at least he's such a memeable president. I'm like, is that really the like lower than hell standard that we're gonna uphold now?
Yeah. The important thing about a president is that he's memeable, not that he can run a country. Which obviously
Right.
wasn't what people were saying with President Joe Biden. Obviously, people weren't also memeing him. There's totally not another reason why people like Trump.
Yeah, because he did fall out of a coconut tree.
Yeah, he did.
The fun has been over, right? Yeah. By September 19th, 2025, DHS stated that there had been 550 arrests from the Midway Blitz operation, up to 50% of which were collateral arrests, or arrest of individuals who were not intended targets of federal agents and are generally warrantless arrests. I want to highlight this before I pass it off to you for 45, is that this means that if there were other people, right, that, for example, were trying to speak up for like their parent or their partner or whatever, and just happened to be nearby, right, trying to like understand what was going on, they would just arrest them.
Yeah,
And so
which is insane.
which is, yeah, it's absolutely horrifying because it's like, how do you get people to accept, right? I mean, I have no other really word for it, a Gestapo force, right, to do these type of warrantless arrests and to go around, masked and everything, and literally, like sometimes even wearing like civilian, I mean, wearing civilian clothing. In fact, that's a huge problem. It's like they're literally, right, the secret police. You know what I mean? It's like they couldn't you know, they just don't call themselves that, but they still are the secret police, right? So,
Yeah, it is insane, and it's crazy how people would talk about um Antifa, but then when it's the government doing it, it's like, oh, we love the masks. It's for their own protection, guys. They're just trying to protect themselves or fucking other whatever bullshit people are saying. Defendants have direct responsibility and control over these mass arrests. Defendant Charles told reporters in September that cities like Chicago had limited cooperation with ICE for too long and it was time to hit Chicago. Vowing to continue the mass arrests in Chicago, Defendant Charles also stated that we have a lot of targets in the area and we want to make sure we can arrest as many of those as possible to get them out of the community. Fucking insane. It's like it's time to fucking hit Chicago. Oh my god.
I know, and to say like, we have a lot of targets, like
Yeah.
again, like it's like just that dehumanization. It's like they're not people, they're not whatever. It's like they're targets, right? Which again is why the earlier in the introduction, so much is placed on showcasing intent, because in the here with the charges, right, you have them being so explicit. Um, so defendant Noam has echoed these sentiments. Oh, and another thing too is to get them out of the community. It's not even
Yeah.
like the community. It's like they are the community.
Yeah.
I just want to add, like, they are the community. Um, defendant Noam has echoed these sentiments, calling Chicago a quote unquote war zone, and swearing that, quote, our work is only beginning, end quote. What an ominous thing to say. Defendants Noam, Bavino, and Charles have personally been involved in arrests and detentions in Chicago, joining multiple arrests and arresting at least one U.S. citizen that we know of, right? We know of
Yeah.
at least one U.S. citizen that was arrested in this case. On September 16th, 2025, defendant Noam declared, quote, I was on the ground in Chicago today to make clear that we are not backing down, end quote. She has been galvanizing officers engaged in enforcement action, vowing, quote, President Trump and I have your backs, end quote, and proclaiming that they were going to, quote unquote, go hard in conducting their raids. Um, Federal agents operating under defendants' command are indiscriminately arresting individuals based on, quote, how they look, end quote, as confirmed by defendant Gregory Bavino, commander at large of CBP, increasing the number of people arrested. Latinx communities in the Chicago area have been the target of aggressive ICE and CBP enforcement on the streets, in schools, the workplace, and in their homes, further widening the enforcement net. ICE, CBP, and other federal agencies are seizing and arresting U.S. citizens, lawful permanent residents, refugees, and asylum seekers, and individuals with valid visa and with legal authorization. And if
Genuinely,
you want, yeah,
genuinely saying that. Yeah, no, of course we are basing our things simply on just like how they look, which is basically saying if a person isn't white, they're up for grabs.
yeah, if you want to continue.
Yeah. As of October 30th, 2025, ICE and CBP have arrested an estimate 3,300 people as part of Midway Blitz. According to defendant Charles, there's not an end date in sight for the Chicago operation. Defendant Noam plans to further increase the number of arrests and detentions in the Chicago area. She stated, "We're doubling down and we're going to be in more parts of Chicago in response to the people there." In addition to mass arrests, defendants have implemented other policy changes aimed at keeping as many immigrants as possible in detention during their legal proceedings, rather than permitting them to be released on bond with conditions. In a July 8 memo, defendant Lyons informed ICE agents that the vast majority of immigrants are now to be detained for the duration of their removal proceedings. As a result, most people are now being detained without any inquiry into their dangerousness, risk of flight, or the efficacy of supervised release or other alternatives to detention to assure their appearance in an immigration court.
And that's just like really, it's the fact that that's done by memo, right? Like, oh, I'm
Yeah,
just gonna, and suddenly that becomes effectual policy across the board, across the country. Um, really just speaks to, um, again, the fact that they don't care at all for, these, like, they like to use the principles of supposed justice and blah blah blah, but they really don't care. Um, Especially, again, just to reiterate for the chat, like, they are not even being allowed to see their lawyers. So even with the ones that could file motions or whatever, those are those that have attorneys. But if those that don't are not even being allowed to get ones in the first place, right? So
yeah, and
on June,
it's
mhm,
also important to bring up. These are people who are being arrested simply for um, most likely their skin color in in all
yeah,
cases.
yeah,
And so it's if you just if you're born with a certain complexion, you're just you're up you're up there. You're up for grabs. You're there. You don't get to see anyone, and you don't even get bond. You don't get like anything. You don't even get to.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like you don't even get supervised release, which is not
Yeah.
exactly like, oh, you're just free to go. Like, um, on June 24th, 2025, DHS and ICE issued a policy memorandum. So another memo, just to make that clear, to all ERO field office directors, including the Chicago field office titled Nationwide Hold Room Waiver. Example one, right, which it's sort of, oh, sorry, it's just citing it there. The memorandum waived the 12-hour time limit in holding facilities, permitting immigrant detainees to be held in such facilities for up to 72 hours, 6 times more than the historical 12-hour policy limit. Defendants claim this hold room waiver was necessary because their increased immigration enforcement efforts. The result was that many more people were held in hold rooms across the country for longer periods of time. At the same time, DHS and Defendant Noam have sought to incapacitate oversight bodies that serve as an internal check and investigate complaints of wrongdoing and abuse by DHS, ICE, and CBP officials. These include the Office of Immigration Detention Ombudsman, the Citizenship and Immigration Services Ombudsman, and the DHS Office of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties, which have been effectively gutted since Trump took power. Defendants' immigration enforcement and detention policies, as well as a lack for federal oversight, have culminated, oversight and accountability have culminated in crisis conditions at Broadview for plaintiffs and the hundreds of putative class members who passed through its doors.
I also want to note with the increase in hold time, it was already stated earlier that I think since March it was that these places were already at capacity.
Yeah.
Extending the stay to where it can be even longer, it's like that is going to cause horrible issues. Uh,
Did you want to read on to B, or did you want to move forward and go to the other
oh no,
page?
we can go to B. We're totally. I honestly thought we were gonna be a little bit more behind than this, so no, we can probably go through everything we wanted. It seems like. Um,
Okay, and that's right, and just skin color, yeah. Everything they're twisted standard, yeah. They'll just rapture anyone who's had a connection with the Mediterranean Sea.
yeah.
Well, I mean, again, it's literally based off of like they essentially give all of the decision power right down to the arresting officers, most of whom are not very well trained, right? So literally, it will just be like, well, they look to me, right? So it's as subjective as could possibly be. It's like, it's not even, again, this is also why there's been a lot of reciprocal arrests, right? Where it's like they're just people that just happen to be around, and so
Yep.
they presume, therefore they must be related, and it's such, things like that. So
And then to move on to B. As a result of defendants' immigration enforcement policies. Oh, oh sorry. I read Pizza. I was like so confused. I was so confused. I was like, "What do you mean, Pippa? I am on live chat." I was like, "Oh, you're telling everyone else." But B, as a result of defendants' immigration enforcement policies, Broadview is severely overcrowded and people are being confined in deplorable conditions unfit for human habitation. It is defendants' policy and practice to hold detainees in Broadview in uninhabitable conditions of confinement. Broadview is a small, two-story office building located in the suburb of Chicago, yet it serves as the primary processing location for the nation's third most populous city. People are typically processed at Broadview before being transported to detention centers across the country or sent out of the United States altogether. Broadview is solely intended for use as a holding facility. A holding facility is for the short term confinement of individuals who have recently been detained or are being transferred to or from a court, detention facility, other holding facility, or other agency. Example 2, Directive 11087.2, Operations of ERO Holding Facilities, the Holding Facility Policy. Section 3.2, prior to the institution of the hold room waiver, ICE policy dictated that, absent exceptional circumstances, no detainee should be housed in a holding facility for longer than 12 hours. Broadview is not equipped for multi-day or even overnight detention. In 2023, on average, detainees were held at Broadview for approximately 5 hours. Example 3, 2023, audit of Broadview by DHS. 2023 audit at 12.
yeah, so again, they went from being there 5 hours, which was the average, to now
Yep.
weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Um, so, right, or much longer, if even that. But um, Under defendants' new immigration enforcement and detention policies, including the hold room waiver, hundreds of people are being held at Broadview at one time. Again, hundreds of people. This is not meant to hold really more than like a dozen, if anything. So hundreds of people where they stay overnight for days at a time. On June 4th, 2025, the median time a detainee was held at Broadview was nearly 48 hours, 4 times the 12-hour limit. By mid-June, according to data provided by ICE, the median time for a detainee held at Broadview had risen to 3 days, meaning half of detainees were being held for more than 3 days, already 6 times the 12-hour limit. Now, so this is at the end of October, some detainees are being held for up to weeks or more at a time. So again, it's gone from 5 hours to, again, hundreds of people being held at this facility, which they're not supposed to be held at in this way, to in June it being, 48 hours, right? So 2 full days. And now, well over 7 days, right? It went from 2 days to 3 days, and now it's 7+ days every single time. Defendants know that Broadview does not have the capacity to hold the number of detainees currently being incarcerated in the facility. Just last month, a Department of Justice attorney for defendants Olson, Noam, and others admitted in a habeas corpus proceeding in this district that despite having held petitioner there overnight, Broadview was not equipped to be an overnight facility. So they know, right? Again, this is very important why they're putting all these words and these terms and these clauses in here, because it's to show that they have even admitted in open court, right? So under oath, right? In a habeas corpus proceeding, right, which is precisely what is which is at question here is rate of habeas corpus, etc. That they know for a fact that it was not equipped to be an overnight facility. So again, this just adds on to the severity of what should be the severity of everything. But
So,
DHS's standard. Yeah,
something
go
I
ahead.
want to add is this sounds like some of the conditions that were like in place at the I forget what the name of the prison was that Trump was having people deported to out of country.
Oh,
Um,
CCOT.
yeah, CCOT. It fucking sounds like our own CCOT with this shit.
Yeah. Which I remember Brooks once like referred to it as like, outsourcing concentration camps. And it's
Yeah.
like, well now we're not outsourcing it anymore.
No,
Uh,
we brought the concentration camps back to America. Okay,
yeah. It's like, yeah.
people were upset about that. We want the concentration camps back. We
Right.
need American concentration camps.
These coppers are running on phantasms and then some, I would say,
Yeah.
Ninja. DHS's standards to prevent, detect, and respond to sexual abuse and assault requires routine audits of ICE detention and holding facilities to evaluate compliance with agency standards. Broadview underwent audits in 2018 and 2023. The DHS's own audits confirmed that Broadview is classified as a, quote, very short-term staging facility, end quote, in its purpose to, quote, receive, process, and prepare detainees for transport to other detention facilities, release, or repatriatization. Both audits determined that it is only intended to be operated as a 12-hour holding facility, and it does not have the capabilities for overnight detention. A 2018 audit found that detainees never shower at Broadview, because, I mean, though it sounds a little bit strange to put in that way, that is to say that there was also never the need to have them, right? Because the whole thing was that they would then be moved off to another site right after 5 hours, which is the median time at this stage. A 2018 audit found that detainees never shower at Broadview. The 2023 audit confirmed that detainees do not change clothes or shower at Broadview and found that it had no medical unit, medical staff, food facilities, or food staff. So again, just to keep this all in our minds, right? Like just to so they're stating these things which have been done by federal audits, right, that happened outside of the context of the current administration. But to showcase that because of this, because it was never meant to be used for long-term detention, they never installed these facilities in the first place, and therefore they never had the ability, the capacity to also do these things, such as having, again, no medical unit, no medical staff, or food facilities, or food staff, right? So they are literally, this, in other words, can be used to say that, in effect, they're also making the ICE agents, right, the essentially fill in for these positions, right? Like what they do hand out for food, what they do hand out as, or rather, what they don't hand out as medicine, right? Excuse me. Despite ramping up arrests in the Chicago area, instituting a policy of mandatory detention, and implementing the nationwide hold room waiver, defendants did not make any physical modifications or improvements to Broadview to accommodate holding people overnight for multiple days or weeks. So again, that's very important to keep in mind, right? Like they already had these audits from 2 years prior, and were from at least a year and a half prior in 2023, and you already have the fact that they did nothing to modify them. Like it's not as though they made a medical, because people might assume, well, maybe they installed something there, even if it's temporary. They never did such a thing. They never made any modifications to these places, and so.
Or also,
Mhm.
even if it turned out later to be insufficient, like it just wasn't enough, they didn't even make the attempt. There was like, it's not even something like small or anything like that. Doesn't even
Right.
get everyone. It's nothing. They did nothing.
Right. Defendants did nothing to ensure that the facility had adequate sleeping conditions, sufficient supplies of food and water, hygiene products, or medical services for people they incarcerated. That such changes were needed was obvious given that defendants were seeking to detain hundreds of people in a small short-term facility. The changes were also required by their own regulations as set forth below. So just to also add on to what you just said, is that again, like it highlights that they did nothing. None of the defendants, right, who all have, and in fact, immigration and customs enforcement, etc., like they essentially have um, a never-ending pocketbook, essentially, right? It's like literally they will give them as much money. I mean, the Trump administration has made this very clear. So the fact that um, people aren't able to sleep in a humane way, that they have no promise of food or water and medical services, um, is again part of the reason why this class action lawsuit uh, it makes sure to stress the intent by which they either did to do or did not do, right? Things, right, in order to add to the severity of this, because some people would try to say, well, it was just negligence, but it's like, no, they knew that they were going to be taking in, and you already have them in open court under oath saying, right, that, oh, they understood, they knew that this facility was not meant for overnight stays.
And
Um,
it's not just that they knew. Like it says at the end, the changes were required by their own regulations. It is by their own suggestion that they need to do this.
but yeah, if you want to start at 67.
Yeah. The result of defendants' policies and practices was foreseeable. Widespread media reports over the summer revealed that deplorable and inhumane conditions to which people at Broadview are subjected. Congressional representatives, too, complained about the conditions to DHS and other defendants beginning in early summer, as set forth below. Conditions have only further deteriorated since Operation Midway Blitz took effect. Advocates and government officials have raised the alarm about conditions at Broadview over the last several months. People have gathered outside the facility to protest the conditions inside, as well as to protest the immigration enforcement operation in the Chicago area. This fall, congressional representatives have continued to press defendants for answers about the conditions inside Broadview. Rather than address these concerns, federal agents have responded with violence. They have launched tear gas and pepper spray on protesters, lawyers, religious leaders, elected officials, and journalists, shot pepper balls and rubber bullets into the crowds, pointed rifles at unarmed individuals, including legal observers and attorneys, and thrown individuals on the asphalt. Just literally everybody.
Yeah.
Defendants have remained impervious to the abject conditions detainees are suffering at Broadview.
Okay, so one, defendants subject detainees at Broadview to severe overcrowding. 72. Broadview contains 4 small occupancy holding rooms. Now, this part right here that we're going to go into is important to keep in mind because, people might think, well, they have some rooms, right? But really keep in mind the amount of people that are going into these rooms, plus the fact that there is no privacy, there is no, right? It's essentially their cells, right? That's the best way to think of them. The 2 largest holding rooms are estimated to only be about 30 feet by 30 feet. So more or less a little bit over 10 meters by 10 meters square. Um, uh, the other 2 rooms are even smaller. One of the smaller rooms is generally used to hold female detainees. There are also 2 single-person isolation cells, which I don't need to go into why that's also terrifying. Defendants pack dozens, sometimes more than 100 individuals into these holding rooms overnight and for days on end. They do not always utilize all 4 multiple occupancy rooms, at times squeezing detainees into only 2 or 3 of the rooms. ICE officers have even held 8 women in an isolation room designed for a single person for at least a day. So, it's already horrific treatment to do, to do solitary confinement, but this is, even beyond that, right? It's, it's not solitary, but it's still, uh, in an isolation room, right?
Also, even in the
According
fucking 30 by 30 feet room, packing more than 100 individuals into that is like genuinely insane. You're gonna be packed up against people. I don't know how you can 30 feet by 30 feet just isn't a lot. Really isn't a lot.
Right. Um, and so, as I was going to say, according to data provided by ICE, between January 1st and July 28th, 2025, before Operation Midway Blitz began, ICE detained 5,202 people at Broadview. Of those, 1,132 people were detained in June 2025, and 856 were detained in July. Defendants have ceased publishing more recent data, I wonder why, which obscures the precise level of overcrowding at the facility, but reports estimate that defendants generally hold at least 200 people in Broadview at one time.
Did you want me to continue to 75?
Please.
Alrighty. Also, before we go, Ninja says the 30 by 30 feet room is a little bit bigger than a classroom. It's clear these facilities were not meant to hold a lot of people for a long time. Yeah. Yeah. The increased number of immigration arrests during Operation Midway Blitz has resulted in overcrowding at Broadview so extreme that people are forced to stand in cramped conditions. There's often not even room for detainees to lie down on the floor. Uh, held, declaration, blah, blah, blah. There's a few things. And people are often held in these conditions for extended periods of time. Both detainees and attorneys who have represented people formerly at Broadview have detailed prolonged detention and severe overcrowding at the facility. A. Attorney Laura Smith's client was detained at Broadview for 3 weeks, from September 17, 2025 until October 8, 2025. Three of her other clients were detained at Broadview for approximately 5 days. B. Attorney Louise Carhart's client was detained at Broadview for 4 days from June 16, 2025 until June 20th, 2025. C. Attorney Kibet Asuna's clients, an elderly woman in her late 70s with severe health conditions, was confined in a small holding cell with many people for 4 days in August 2025. D. Juan Gaspar Nachobena was held at Broadview for 6 days from September 8th to September 13th in a very crowded room with about 80 other people. He observed three other hold rooms that were also very crowded. Gaspar Nochebuena met two people from Honduras who were at Broadview for 7 or 8 days.
Which,
Then,
just think about that, right?
yeah,
Like you're stuck in, we don't know which one of the rooms, right? We don't know which one of the rooms. It could be the smaller one, it could be the larger one. But if they are in the room with about 80 people, right? So even if he observed the three other hold rooms, right? Because they did say um, that the two largest rooms. So there are four total. So
yeah,
we know three of them were were crowded to the brim with at least 80 people. Or pardon me, that all four of them were crowded with a lot of people, and that two other people from presumably um, Honduras, where Mr. Nochebuena might be from, um, were there for at least a week,
yeah.
right? Just stuck in those rooms, right? For did they get arrested? Oh, an attorney. Damn, they don't have any limited. Yeah, they don't have any limits now. And if you want, I can read the rest of these. Um,
Sure.
Claudia Pereira Guevara, a mother of two young children, was held at Broadview for 5 days, from October 2nd to October 7th, 2025. She met another person who had already been there for 6 days when Guevara arrived and was still there when Guevara was released 5 days later. So, again, with with the total of 11 days, right? A total of 11 days, this person was there in these cramped conditions. Um, for one day, she was held together with eight other women in a single person isolation cell. She observed that the holding rooms for men were extraordinarily overcrowded, with men forced to stand shoulder to shoulder for lack of space. And keep in mind, they don't have anything to sleep with, right? Like they don't have anywhere to sleep on, let alone the fact that it's standing room only, like literally standing room only. So it's like they can't even really rest, if even that. Um, so Jack Doe, um, Jack Doe was held at Broadview for 6 days in September 2025. He estimated there were well over 100 people in the room. There was no space to lie down. People were lying on top of each other and in the bathroom area. He was forced to attempt to sleep sitting up. So again, like there's so little space that um, people have to actually sleep in the bathroom area, which is again is not exactly separate from the rest of the area, right? So it's yeah. Juan Gabriel Aguirre Alvarez was first held in a room with hundreds of others. The room was so crowded that there was not enough room for everyone to lie down. Later, he was placed in a smaller room, which officers filled with over 50 people, making it more crowded than the first room he was in. Again, hundreds of people, right? It's like we already spoke about 100. Now we're talking about hundreds of people. Imagine the smell of the bed. Well, right.
Imagine
And that's
having to get to the bathroom with all this
yeah,
crowd. Uh, uh,
I know.
it's not even that. You like I don't fucking like I don't know. Also, just the weight of this all, because I'm gonna be honest. I assume they don't have more than one or two toilets. Well, one or two is I assume probably going to be like the max. I can't imagine that they would have anything more than that.
Yeah. I mean, and again, these things are completely exposed, right? So
Yeah.
there's no privacy, there's nothing, right? So Gladys Chavez, a mother and organizer who was arrested at a routine check-in in June. Note, when they say routine check-in, this means, right, that they were doing everything right to gain legal citizenship. So even a person doing everything right in this case um, was confined in a Broadview holding room for 4 days with nearly 30 other women, including women who were nursing, pregnant, and elderly, some of whom were held up for 60 days. So again, like, the fact that, I mean, they essentially are willing to, I mean, this is another thing as well, just to quickly, um, they are okay with people dying, right? Because these are people
Yeah.
that are seen as completely expendable. Right, and that is why that's why using the term illegal is not something that, I mean, at least I would say we should not advocate for, right? Because that leads to the normalization of this already very normalized dehumanization of these people. But again, these are people that could have miscarriages, and this also means that by saying nursing, that also means something else. That means that their baby is there with them.
Yeah.
So that's another thing to keep in mind, right? Like if there's hundreds of women in one room and there are babies there, like imagine trying to take care of a baby. And again, you don't have any way to clean yourself, let alone the baby,
Clean your child.
right? Right, exactly.
Also, I want to add, um, 30 other women, so there's 31 women in this room. Um, but keep in mind that it was said earlier that the women were usually held in the smaller rooms, which we didn't get a size for. 30 by 30 for the large rooms is the size we got, and it was told that usually the women were held in the smaller rooms. So,
Right. And no, and yes, Isam, yes, it does say pregnant as well. So that's why I'm saying
yeah.
like this could also lead to them having miscarriages, which in some states would also make it count as a criminal action against them,
Yep.
right? But it's not like, which is something, that's a whole different story, but it's like just the fact that that's something that they're not in control of, but they would never charge ICE as being, the people that caused it, even though they are causing it by putting them in these inhumane conditions, right? So, um, Freddy Casares Gonzalez was detained at Broadview for 5 days from September 16th to September 20th, 2025. He was held in a small room with hundreds of people. He was forced to lay down near the toilet where there was urine on the ground because there was nowhere else to lay down. So yeah, that goes back to your point before. It's like again, the toilet um the toilet uh does not mean that, oh, it's in a separate room and it's everything. It's like this is completely open to the other hundreds of people that are there with you, right? And it's like kind of we were saying, like imagine to get to the bathroom. It's like imagine when you're there, you have people just like surrounding it as well that are sleeping, right? It's like it's just
And also this makes it sound like that there's probably not more than one toilet in these areas.
right in the introduction, I believe, it does say more or less that when they were talking about the conditions themselves of the facility, I believe that they did say that because if you remember that there were it's open so that way men in the other room can look inside of where women are held,
Yeah.
right, and vice versa. So there's that too, right? Like it's just like it just keeps so there's only one for both.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is like insane when you're being held with not 30 people, which 30 people, one bathroom, already pretty insane. It's sometimes over 100.
Yeah, or hundreds in this
Yeah,
case. Yeah.
yeah,
On information and belief, individuals are not screened for their vulnerabilities, and vulnerable individuals such as the elderly, disabled, pregnant, LGBTI, or gender nonconforming individuals are not provided heightened protection such as single housing. So again, this is super important um, to keep in mind that people that would need right special protection that need extra care are not given that at all because they don't even screen for it, right? They literally, one is also like if you are queer, right, you're forced to in essence what they think that you should be in, right? So this is dependent upon whether they do it by sight, right, or whether they do it by right? Assigned at birth status. So again, which can lead to other problems down the line. Um, and again, this they don't care if people are disabled, right? Like if they can't walk. I mean, what if a person can't walk, right? Because they don't let them take their wheelchairs in there, right? So then how are they supposed to get to the restroom, right? It's like
yeah,
things like that, right?
yeah.
Um, a woman spent 3 days in Broadview in late September and explained, quote, "We told the guards that this place was at full capacity, but they kept bringing people inside. They treated us like animals, or worse than animals, because no one treats their pets like that," end quote. Another person explained that immigrants detained at Broadview are confined in cells, quote, "like a pile of fish," end quote. Now, I just want to quickly state that this is something that actually a lot of immigrant communities have often said about like gringos, right, to sort of say it that way, that like they love their dogs more than they like will tolerate us, right? Like they hate us so much that they would literally treat dogs better than they would treat us. And which also has like a colonial like uh resonance to it as well. But the fact that they do say they treat us worse than animals because they wouldn't treat their pets like that is also like an interesting peak of something that was sort of um, noted even outside of the facilities, right? Um,
Not even like a pile of fish, which people keep fucking fish in really inhumane conditions. I've seen like insane shit done with fish. Uh it shocks me because when I was younger, like from a very early age, I've always taken care of like fish. I used to have a lot of fish pets, and I used to like even when I was like a little kid, used to like clean the tank and stuff, clean like the tank myself. And we had like a really big tank. It wasn't like a small tank, and it's like fucking insane.
right. And yeah, no, it's sad to know that like these tactics were things that were developed right in other places, particularly like the state of Israel, right? And I would highly recommend people to read the Palestine Laboratory by Lowenstein, Anthony Lowenstein, amazing journalist and German Australian academic as well. Um, but yes, yeah, you already had such facilities with the boat site, and that's another thing too is that they are what they are converting to holding facilities can literally be something as small as like a boat, which is also horrifying. We also say that Hungarians, Eastern Europeans, at times about Western, yeah. Um, yeah, it's like a common thing about speaking about Westerners, right? But it's like something like the novel that I'm talking about is actually about a gender non-conforming, non-binary Latinx person, and it's titled "Their Dogs Came with Them." And the reference I'm making is the fact that that's what indigenous people said about the Spanish, because they would um, sick their dogs on people,
Yeah.
particularly those that did not fit within the gender binary that the Europeans brought over. So seeing that, like that's the reason why, yeah, they like their pets more than immigrants. Yeah, exactly. And then there's also that too. It's like what they would use their dogs for. So if you want to start on 2, whenever you're ready.
Two.
Oh wait, Gempt put. Wait a second, I didn't read Gemp's thing really quickly. A study from 2014 determined that roughly 1% of all detainees are released after months of detention because they have U.S. citizenship, and a further 1% are deported anyway despite having citizenship. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's from 2014. Wonder what the numbers would be now. 2. Defendants deny detainees sufficient and adequate food and water. The individuals held at Broadview are kept in a state of hunger and thirst. Defendants have not constructed food facilities or hired food preparation staff at Broadview. The food provided to detainees is insufficient and lacks nutrition. At most, detainees receive 2 to 3 small, cold sandwiches per day. Sometimes detainees receive just bread. There's a whole bunch of fucking examples of all this. Crazy. Detainees do not receive any hot meals. Detainees repeatedly decried the lack of food and the extreme hunger they suffered as a result. Defendants also failed to provide any dietary accommodation for detainees with specific dietary or medical needs or religious restrictions. For instance, uh, attorney Kibetz Usuda's client is in her late 70s and has diabetes, high cholesterol, and high blood pressure. She was only offered sandwiches for every meal, which was dangerous for her medical condition. B. Attorney Shelby Viselka's client is pre-diabetic and follows a special diet during the 4 days she was detained at Broadview. She was not given a special diet. She also only received a sandwich for each meal. John Doe has religious restrictions that prevent him from eating the Subway sandwiches he was provided at the facility. When he informed the officers of his restriction, he was told to take it or leave it. As a result, he went without food for approximately 4 days. Jose Aguirre Pozos was detained with some individuals who were diabetic, but they received the same food, a small amount of bread, as all the other detainees, which can lead to dangerous and uncontrolled surges in blood sugar. I didn't actually know this. Lisa says bread converts to sugar. I actually think I did know that, but I didn't. That didn't click until you said that. I didn't remember that until you said that. Which means, um, these people are gonna have to risk not eating, which can also cause issues. There was a woman who I was in a facility with who was diabetic, and she had to be taken to the hospital because her blood sugar was getting low, and she was like, she like couldn't move, and she was like fucking like turning like ghostly white. It was like really bad. Um, on information and belief, pregnant
When
detainees are not provided with regular access to meals nor additional snacks, milk, juice, or any of the extra nutrition recommended for pregnant people. Then, if you want to read 83, can.
yeah, drinking water at Broadview is a scarce resource. Let's see. Drinking water is not readily available, and defendants do not distribute it regularly. An adequate daily fluid intake is about 15.5 cups of fluids per day for men and about 11.5 cups per day for women, with about 80% of daily fluid intake coming from drinks. At Broadview, detainees typically receive 1 bottle of water with each small sandwich, generally 2 or 3 times daily, but sometimes less. Detainees are lucky if they receive 6 cups of water, about half of the adequate amount per day. When detainees request more drinking water, officers refuse to provide it. And to keep this in perspective, um, um, we do have to also keep in mind that, um, when they're saying these amounts, that also isn't taking into account weather conditions, right? as well as like prescription usage or whatever, right? Like all these other factors that make it so that people have to drink more water or, right? Let alone people that have, right, different types of conditions, congenital whatsoever, or whatever it might be, right? That particularly um, would also require them to have like a higher water intake per day. So the fact that they're barely getting six, which is barely enough to keep people alive, um, means that there are a lot of people that have these chronic conditions, etc., that are experiencing like pain. Like imagine having kidney failure and not being able to drink enough water. Like that's just ridiculous. Um,
Jim says
and
this doesn't meet federal nutrition requirements for federal prisons. Yeah.
Right. And yeah, you're right, Lisa. So much for pro-life. Well, yeah, it's pro-life, but for whom, right? Pro-life for me, but not for thee, so
It's
to speak.
it's it's pro life until you're out of the womb and then you get to die.
Yeah. 3. Detainees are held in filthy, unsanitary conditions and denied access to showers and hygiene items. Now, remember, I want to keep it very clear that, or having difficulty of water intake, right? Yeah, as well as that, and also people that also cannot retain, right, and have to use um the restroom even more, right? It's like, again, like people already feel difficulty and can have, as they say, shy bladders, right, already when it comes to just using a public restroom in general. Now imagine being in a restroom where not only can the hundreds of people confined in it see you, there's no privacy, but also the people around you in the other holding cells, right, they're also can see you, right? That's just,
Jempt also says a
yeah.
few years back they're performing unauthorized hysterectomies on detainees. Yeah.
Yeah, which the United States has a long, which again does count towards, um, again, the genocide charges that could be leveled against the United States. But
Yep.
um, diabetic people are more thirsty, right?
Yep.
Exactly. And so yeah, many elders start to have issues with fluid intakes. Exactly. And again, if they're also all together, right? Again, just think about this, like all of these people, hundreds of people in one room during the summer, right? I know it talks about the cold, but think about during summer where you also have to drink more water. You have all these people together in a room with all of their body heat. It's overwhelming, right? And also they can't bathe, they can't, you know what I mean? Like, so all these exacerbating circumstances, right, that just add on to how horrible this is, also comes into play as well. And remember, this is also, they also don't provide adequate food for the babies that are in there because there are nursing mothers, right? We know that there are nursing parents there, right? So that also means that we all, even for babies, right? That's also a question. I'm shy bladder, like, that's just being in prison, though the shitting, yeah, I mean, right, but even so, like, they still will, yes, right, but the whole point is this is not supposed to be a prison, right? This is just a temporary holding facility, which is something they admitted in open court. So that's um, 84. The holding rooms at Broadview are, quote, extremely dirty, end quote, and infested with cockroaches, centipedes, and spiders. There is trash on the floor. This is from a Jane Doe declaration. There is trash on the floor. There is blood, other bodily fluids, and hair in the sink and on the walls. The toilets are filthy and often get clogged, resulting in urine and dirty water on the floor where detainees are forced to sleep. The windows have been sealed and boarded up, depriving the detainees of fresh air and natural light. So again, this is what's also important to keep in mind is the fact that they also make it so that um, not only are people exposed to these things, right, but let alone whatever other bodily fluids might be, um, that's everywhere. But that also means that if they become clogged, right? And you're one of the people that unfortunately has to sleep close to it, right? It's like at any moment, right? You could wake up with a splash to your face, God forbid. But also the fact that um, the window, and also they don't care about the plumbing either. The people in these places, the ICE agents, they really couldn't care less. Um, um, the windows being sealed and boarded up, that's not just to make it so people can't look in, right, and take video or which would also be a privacy issue. But it's important to also keep in mind that even the air, right, is stagnant and is reeking with all of this and natural light. So they leave the unnatural lights on, right, 24/7, which we know is torturous, and also allowing so that these odors fester and continue, right? So it's like it's a breeding ground for this stuff. 85 defend. Oh wait, I see that. This is the type of conditions that are present in state jails, which are terrible. Oh yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, there is so much that needs to be done in the, even just temporary measures in the correction system that, yeah, like even um, just basic, human decency stuff is important. Same happened with the Trail of Tears or the march that the Navajo had to do. Elderly infants died, right? Which is also part of the intent, right? Um, like they've already shown intent, or they've already, in my view, by showcasing this and also having the declaration in open court, showcasing that they do know what's happening and that they do know that this is not supposed to be happening. Showcases that again that they are doing these horrific acts of violence. Um, precisely to make it so that people are suffering. Um, I think there are cases where they had to dig out the toilet by hand, the inmates. Yeah, yeah. No, you're absolutely right. And the thing is that they also, if they do that, so that way they have a place to use the restroom, they don't have anywhere to wash their hands, right? There's no way for them to get clean, right? They just have to clean themselves on clothing, right? They can't wash their hands afterwards. So,
Or if not clothing, the walls in an already cramped space.
right. Um, And I can read the next bit since you read that long bit till we
Yeah,
get
no
to
problem.
4. Defendants refuse to provide individuals with basic hygiene items, including soap, toothbrushes, toothpaste, hand sanitizer, wet wipes, shampoo, lotion, or tissues. Defendants failed to provide adequate menstrual products. One woman held at Broadview in June, with nearly 30 other women reported not being provided with any menstrual products. So again, one woman is the one saying this, but we can presume therefore that none of those women, all 30 of those other women, none of them received any sanitary products. Let alone, of course, the fact that though it isn't mentioning this, and it only mentioned it sort of in passing earlier, right, with LGBTQI um, individuals, but the fact that also trans men, right, that right, like etc., right, like gender non-conforming individuals, right, non-binary individuals that also would need these things are not being provided them at all either. Um, Defendants largely fail to provide detainees with the opportunity to bathe. One of the holding rooms has 2 showers. According to the 2023 DHS audit of Broadview, the showers are inoperable. So they know. So again, that's something that was mentioned earlier that in 2018, but that's also because they were never meant to be used, right, for showering, right? Like that was the thing. It's because it was only a sort of way stop. They also never really kept up with the plumbing for these things. And so, yeah. Um, no other rooms have bathing facilities, right? So this space is no longer used for that. Um, so again, so we know none of the rooms, um, uh, none of the other of the 4 rooms has any showers either. Broadview facility staff have told the auditors that, quote, detainees do not shower while at this facility, end quote, nor do they change clothes. Detainees are not provided with clean clothes or towels and are forced to wear the same clothes, including underwear, for the duration of their detention. Now, this is something that I don't know if they're going to mention it, but because we know that there are nursing mothers that are there, right? Nursing parents. What does that mean for their babies? And, other young children. Claudia Pereira Guevara states that the holding cells at Broadview were dirty and unsanitary. She and others asked for a broom to try to clean the cell themselves, but were refused. So again, like, it's so bad that they're like, we will do the work, just give us a broom. And they're like, no. Right? Like, no, we were not going to give you something to, even if you do all the work. Right? So
Well, that's a
again, very
deadly
important.
weapon. They can't give them to these illegals. Okay. God knows what they'll do with them.
Uh, it will have a hygiene problem, multiple different diseases. Right. And again, that's why I'm stressing the fact that there are children, that there are other people that could be, already have chronic conditions, congenital conditions, etc., let alone the fact that they are being placed in conditions that then make it so that, right, they are extremely susceptible to disease, which in my, as I said in my own stream and in my own research, right, is like something that was always used against particularly Mexican immigrants. Is this, and you see this also with Jewish people in Europe as well, where they used to be equated with disease itself, right? Like they carry disease, they are the carriers of disease, right? Quote unquote, right? These are historical things that have already, been sort of written about, not just by myself, but by other scholars. So like the fact that they are the ones making it so that these diseases are there also says a lot, I would say. Um, Look up the
It.
dirty protests. Yeah, sorry, my bad. Go ahead.
I was gonna say real quick, and it's also still the case when people are talking about or making joke about Hispanic or Latinx people, like that they are dirty. It's like not something that's gone away. It's still a thing. Still very much
Right.
a thing. I've heard it.
And like this is something that just to quickly, was a quick aside, is like when they did the baths that they used to, the sanitation baths or the delousing baths that they used to make Mexicans do, they only made Mexicans have to do it, right? And the reason why they claimed so is that it was to, quote, protect the country from typhus, end quote.
Yeah.
Um, Even though there had never been a typhus outbreak at the border. In fact, the only typhus outbreak there ever was in New England. Um, in that entire time, but they still used that excuse against them in order to make people, just to give a quick example from the historical side, be shaven from head to toe, right? And it wasn't, with modern, technology, which is also not necessarily so um, forgiving. I guess I'll put it like that. But then they afterwards they had to take baths in kerosene and vinegar, right? And so yeah, it's not not good stuff. They had nowhere else to put it. That's not a joke. That's the rationale, I'm sure. Oh yeah, yeah. Brooms might make them fly away, right? Um, so yeah, so like this type of violence has been visited upon people, you know, vis-a-vis the southern border for quite a long time, well over 100 years. Um, Officers never cleaned the room during the 5 days she was detained from October 2nd to 7th, 2025. There was no soap, no sanitizer, no showers, no way to wash herself. She was forced to wear the clothes she was arrested in the entire time she was detained at Broadview. Attorney Jasmine Pedraza's client did not have access to soap, a toothbrush, or toothpaste during the 3 days he was detained at Broadview. He was not given any opportunity to shower. Martin Taimich Polito did not receive soap, toothpaste, a toothbrush, or any other hygiene products. There were 2 showers in one of the rooms he was held in, but neither worked. He was unable to shower while he was detained at Broadview. Chao Zhou had no opportunity to bathe or shower at Broadview, and the only shower fixture he saw had a sign that read, "Out of order. The room stank of body odor." Juan Gabriel Aguirre Alvarez did not have access to a shower, soap, hand sanitizer, toothpaste, or a toothbrush while he was at Broadview. No one received a change of clothes. As a result, the room smelled very badly of sweat and body odor. And again, this is something that we've already mentioned, right? Like the fact that people are sweating, right? And the fact that it does, right? Like this also goes back to the fact that they're also not getting enough water. They're still being packed hundreds in a room, right? So that's another thing that sort of adds to this, right? Is the fact that you have it even smelling of sweat and such. Aguirre Alvarez, yeah, I thought that was wrong. Yeah, not Alvarez. Saw a man get sick and vomit in and around the toilet in his holding room. The officers did not provide medical care, nor did they clean up the vomit. Detainees were forced to try to use toilet paper to clean up the vomit. So again, they do not have any medical facilities. They knew that they had to have medical facilities. They did nothing, not any modification to do this. So not only did they not give them any medicine, but they didn't even clean it up, and so they had to use toilet paper, right? Um, on the final night that Aguirre Alvarez was detained at Broadview, another man in the room defecated in his pants. The man's soiled pants were placed in the garbage. No staff members came to clean it up, so it was left there the entire night and smelled terrible. Freddy Casares Gonzalez was unable to shower for 5 days. He was at Broadview. Officers did not give him any soap, toothpaste, a toothbrush, or anything else to clean himself with. The room smelled strongly of feces, urine, and body odor. The risk of transmission of illness or disease is high because of overcrowding, limited access to food, limited access to medical care, and poor hygiene and sanitation. And I also want to stress very low access to water as well, to clean water.
In insane conditions. Genuinely, like, insane conditions.
Yeah. Like it's like there's nothing that would ever. I mean, there is nothing that justifies this. But it's horrifying to see people try to say that, well, this group of people does deserve a quote unquote right for XYZ reason, especially when it's something like they illegally crossed an invisible line, essentially, right? Like that's their reasoning.
Detainees are forced to sleep on the concrete floor without bedding, near open toilets, and with constant bright lights, resulting in sleep deprivation. Um, and that's all. Like already has been brought up. This is for um um in the earliest cases 2 days, and towards the end, potentially a week or more. A week or more. So 7 days sleep deprived, which, as someone who like experienced this, um, it's not very fun. It's not a very fun thing. I used to not be able to sleep really badly, and it used to literally cause me to get sickly because I would be up for so long, and my body would just fucking. Uh, Also, this is going to cause them to sweat more. I don't know why. Sleep regulates temperature somehow, and when you don't sleep, it gets fucked up. And one of the things, so it would get really hot. Um, but I would also shiver. I would also shiver, and so I'd get even hotter than normal. It was one of the weird things. It was super fucking sucked. But yeah, so these people are not going to be doing very good.
Yeah. Again, like another thing to also stress is like these aren't all able-bodied, right? Like people, these are people that suffer from distress, which also causes people to feel anxiety and also causes them to sweat more because of
Yeah,
that, etc.
and lose more
But
water.
also, and lose more water, right? And so, um, we already know that even 24-hour lighting is it's recognized as it violates legal protections against cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment. um, and also can cause, right, depression, feelings of depression, anxiety, hallucinations, right? Which then, and this is from another article, not from this report, but then they will use that as a reason to be violent against the detainees. Like that is a specific thing that did happen where because people did begin to feel badly, and one person, it got so bad that they began to, have began to, behave in a way that might be considered like an outburst, then the agents were enacted extreme violence against the individual, who again was reacting to the fact that they're not getting
What is it?
sleep.
Hallucinations usually appear around like what 72 hours, but obviously even if you're just not sleeping well, even if you're not able to sleep like a little bit and at all, you are going to be agitated. You're already on edge because you're in a facility uh, against your will for potentially no justifiable reason in your mind, and yeah, you don't even know. It's not even like you can come up with something. There's like there's you're being held. You don't know when you're gonna get out. You're not able to see a lawyer. Not able to make any phone calls, and
Right.
so you're already on edge.
Yeah, and you also don't get any natural sunlight, or
Nope.
so your circadian cycle is completely your sleep cycle's already messed up. Like all they're creating the conditions to create, right, serious bodily or mental harm to the individuals, um, and exacerbate them as much as possible, which again, I know people might say, oh well, it's the UN and stuff like that, but the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhumane, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment, also called this the CAT, which the United States has ratified, which again, people might say, et cetera, but regardless, the whole point is that this is considered legally as torture, right? Because it is any intentional action, right, done against an imprisoned person of severe pain or suffering, right, of which constant lighting qualifies, when it's used to like break detainees psychologically, right? Like, I mean, it does cause that, right? Like, that's why I use the example I gave. And so the standard, and even like the Nelson Mandela rules, which are also a UN standard minimum rules for the treatment of prisoners, right? That it mandates that cells have adequate lighting but allow for darkness during the sleeping hours to preserve people, like the health of the individual. So again, the 24/7 lighting and solitary confinement, etc., among other things, are violations of Article 16 of the CAT, which again, I understand people might say, oh, international law, whatever, but I mean, again, these are things that are even litigated even in the United States, right? Also, to make a right-wing argument, these conventions are part of the European traditions, many post-war conventions of refugee rights, human rights started by Churchill. Hmm.
That's a very
Right,
good
I mean,
point.
did it, yeah,
But to continue, defendants are systematically subjecting class members to sleep deprivation as a result of the poor sleeping conditions. There were hard benches or plastic chairs in some of Broadview's holding cells, but not enough for everyone. Most individuals are forced to sleep on the dirty concrete floor in near open toilets, raising the risk that they will come in contact with feces or urine matter. There are often so many people in the holding cell that some detainees cannot even lay down to sleep on the floor. Some are reported trying to sleep sitting upright. Defendants do not provide beds, mats, mattresses, bedding, pillows, or sufficiently warm blankets. Some individuals receive thin foil blankets. Others receive nothing. Defendants subject detainees to severe and uncomfortable temperature differentials. Sometimes the rooms are hot and the air is thick and suffocating. At other times, especially overnight, The holdrooms are freezing cold with the air conditioner blasting. Detainees often arrive in t shirts, and most do not have sweatshirts or jackets. Some have their shoes taken away. When they ask federal agents for more blankets or clothing, the officers generally refuse or delay. Gaspar Nochebuena asked agents for a foil blanket as he could see that the officers had available blankets in the facility. The officers did not give him a blanket for 3 days, by which time he had become sick. On his fifth day at Broadview, after another detainee fainted and was taken to the hospital, he finally received a sweater. Defendants generally keep on bright security lights throughout the night, making it more difficult to sleep. The sleeping conditions at Broadview deprive the putative class members of sleep and increase their risk of suffering anxiety, depression, and sickness. Many detainees, including detainees who were elderly or had medical conditions, described attempting to sleep on dirty floors in brightly lit and crowded holding rooms for days at a time. And then that is the end. I thought there might have been more.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll start up 5 in a second.
Yeah.
Karasu says, by the way, this is why you've seen some Tory party members calling out Braverman's immigration policies. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like it does go quote unquote against Western values, which is, you know, like they love to bring up, and again, like even in the United States, which is what I think a lot of people would be like, well, they don't necessarily care about international human rights law, but even in the United States, like in Keenan versus Hall, which is very important, like for international law standards as well, like even there it found that constant bright lighting um, was it causes unnecessary suffering, and in various settlements, right, of class action lawsuits, they have cited that particular case as a way in order to get um, relief, right? So that is where, like, even in the United States, even there you have, legal precedent set where, you can't use things like the constant light, let alone what they're doing with people that, are suffocatingly hot in the summer, right? Or even within the same day, right? And then they artificially, right, with the air conditioning blasting, make it so that they get sick and that people are put very close together, that nothing is done to keep them healthy, right? It's like the disease will spread very quickly in these conditions. So, it just,
It's also,
uh,
I think, important to note that um, they don't have sufficiently warm blankets. But as that one case noted with that person, the person asked for a blanket, didn't get it for 3 days, and in that time, he got sick. He he got sick and stuff like that. So it's like, even if the blankets aren't sufficiently able to, like, keep them from being cold, they still aren't potentially getting them for days at a time. Days at a time.
mhm,
Days within asking.
right. And
Even
not
when they
only
have
that,
them.
but
Even when they have them.
right, exactly. Yeah, I was about to say that, like, yeah, like even in his case, like he could like you could see the officer essentially standing with a pile of blankets next to them,
Yeah.
and they're still like, we don't have any blankets for you,
No.
right?
No. No, you just don't get any. No. No, you have to get sick. Okay, it's necessary.
And
It's
another
like,
thing is the yeah, go ahead, sir, my bad.
I was just gonna say, it's like basically what's literally happening. They're forcing these people to become ill. They're
Right,
giving
to
these
become
people
ill,
illness.
right? They're giving people illness, they're causing them to fall ill, and then saying, oh, these people must be associated with, like illness.
Yeah.
The other thing too, just to sort of add, to sort of highlight this, was that one person at Broadview, um, who um, uh, that only it was only after another detainee fainted and was taken to the hospital on the
Yeah.
fifth day
Yep. Yep.
that then they're like, okay, fine, like
Yeah.
now, yeah, so
Now
now we'll
you
give
get
you a
it.
sweater.
Now you get this stuff. Yeah. Fucking literally insane.
So, it's just to deal with medical and mental health care. 5. Defendants do not provide putative class members with essential medical or mental health care. Defendants fail to provide the putative class members of adequate medical or mental health care. Broadview has the capacity to accommodate a medical office. It has rooms where private interviews and mental health examinations may take place, which is something that was determined at their audit in 2018. Defendant ICE maintains that the ICE Health Service Corps, which among other things is supposed to provide medical support for domestic transfers and international. So they maintain that they do have an organization, right? In this case, the ICE Health Service Corps, right, which exists precisely to to provide medical care in these cases. So they have, as it were, doctors, nurses, etc., to help people, but they don't use them in these facilities, which again adds to the fact that of how inhumane these conditions really are. Despite these capabilities, defendants have not created a medical unit at Broadview, nor have they hired any medical or mental health staff to care for detainees incarcerated in the facility. And this was something that was evident in their last audit in 2023. So defendants do not conduct even a basic medical or mental health screening for people brought to the facility. Defendants do not monitor detainees for physical or mental health conditions. When detainees ask for medical attention, officers refuse. Claudia
Some
Pereira Guevara.
something I also want to note. This technically, because of the only 5 hour time period, might not have been an issue most of the time, but even if that was the case beforehand, um, even with the 12 hour holding period, people could seriously, um, people with diabetes could seriously be like affected, and like
Right,
other conditions. Like already before, not having that was a problem. Not having any of that is a problem, but it's less of a problem because, well, they're going to get transferred, usually within 5 hours. So hopefully you could, even if there were some issues, most of it wouldn't have happened. But now
right.
that isn't even, it's even
Claudia
longer.
Pereira Guevara. Right, exactly. And that's also nothing to highlight is that the fact that they knew that they needed these facilities, especially when they've started to move up the time periods,
Yeah,
but they still didn't do anything. Again, on
yeah,
this idea, like, why should we give? And again, this is something that has been said, right? It's like, because a lot of this right wing rhetoric has always been used for prisoners, right? Like, why should we give them free medical care or, you know, whatever, right? And it's like, why should we give the detainees free medical care or whatever? And it's like, well, technically, everyone should get free medical care. It shouldn't be only for a specific class of people, but, let alone the fact that, you would limit it to some people as opposed to others, especially when it comes to like these conditions, right? So, um, Claudia Pereira Guevara became ill at Broadview, suffering from numbness in her lower body, an inability to feel her legs, and vomiting. She was not seen by a doctor or any other medical professional. Defendants' officers refused to take her to a hospital or medical facility. She was eventually taken out of her holding cell and was left to sit in a wheelchair in the central area of the building outside the cells. Guevara also observed two men suffer serious medical events at Broadview. One of the men appeared to have suffered a heart attack. Officers laughed at the man and made light of his medical condition. So just, you know, would want to emphasize that as well.
which
Attorney
should be,
Kimberly,
which something to be clarified. Even if that person didn't die, there is the risk that if not taken to the hospital, I'm pretty sure from heart attacks and strokes and stuff, you can experience extreme neurological damage. I'm pretty sure that's with heart attacks can also cause that.
right. Just like the absolute degradation, right? Of just like, it's literally like I think of it like if it were me or somebody else, right? And it's like you they're laughing at you as you're, could possibly literally be dying, and it's due to their fault, right? Like to their negligence and everything. Juan Gabriel, oh, pardon me. Attorney Kimberly Weiss's client reported he saw people being carried out on stretchers, and he was not sure if they were alive. The air was thick and suffocating, and he saw people struggling to breathe. Now, I want to highlight again, we know that there are nursing parents here. So even if we have this concern, right? Like for people that are elderly, for people that are still babies, right, toddlers, imagine them having to deal with the fact that even for uh, an adult person, right, it's hard for them to breathe, let alone the elderly, right? Like if they have COPD or whatever it might be, right? It's like they literally could die. I mean, literally from just the inability to breathe, let alone the fact that people are struggling to breathe, right? Um, Juan Gabriel Aguirre Alvarez saw a man whose face was bleeding. Officers placed the man in the holding room while he was bleeding and did not provide him any medical treatment. Now, I want to highlight this because, again, they're not screening people, and I'm not saying that, oh, therefore we must presume, but one of the things is like blood-borne pathogens, right? Like, and other things that could happen because of this, let alone because you can't wash your hands, you don't know who they're placed next to, you don't know, right? Let alone the fact that he's bleeding and not taken care of, right? It's like, even just not even like the disease perspective, but like even just the fact this person is bleeding from their face and they're just like, here you go, right? And just to place you in a place that's already filled with all these potential, or actually, we shouldn't even say potentially, like we know, right? Because they talk about it being dirty, right? It's like all these contaminants is horrifying. Aguirre Alvarez also saw several people whose hands and arms were swollen and bruised as a result of their treatment during arrests. Only some of the men received slings for their arms, but were not otherwise provided with treatments for their injuries. Many of the people in the cell with Jack Doe were sick and coughing. They complained of headaches and body aches and became sick. They requested medication, but the officers did not give them anything and said they do not have medication at Broadview. Again, highlights the fact that they're supposed to have medical facilities at this point, right? You know, let alone the fact that they don't even have any, any medication whatsoever to give them. Jane Doe requested medical care for an injured toe made worse by the use of force by officers during her arrest. She received no care at Broadview. She asked for medical attention at Broadview, but the officers refused to provide her care and told her that she would have to wait until she was at another detention facility to receive medical care. Defendants held her at Broadview for 3 days without medical attention. Now, again, it doesn't state how severe the injury was, but this immediately impairs her ability to walk, right? Let alone like go to the restroom, all these other things, right? Just like
And
unbelievable.
also, if it's at all an open wound, they said they take their shoes, which if the floor is dirty and stuff like that, and I think it said that there was like insects and stuff in that area.
Hmm.
Insects could potentially be chewing on it, or it could just, if it's an open wound, it could get infected.
Right. Yeah, I think they said there were cockroaches, centipedes, and I forget what else was the thing. But yeah, they did say that it did have particular insects, but
Yeah.
still insects in general. Juan Gaspar Nochebuena requested Tylenol for a toothache. Officers told him that they did not have any. They did not give him any medication or medical attention. Santos Rebolledo Altamirano attempted to alert officers about an older man who was not feeling well. The officers swore at him and did nothing, so they, cursed at him, cussed him out. It was not until the man started foaming at the mouth that officers finally took the man out of the cell. Which is just, again, like, until he was literally foaming at the mouth. Like, literally, essentially could already be, on the verge of dying, if not, Juan Munoz saw a man who had a scraped face and neck, swollen jaw, a bruised wrist, and a bruised leg. Despite his multiple injuries, and also the fact that they swore at him, right? Like, that's how dehumanizing this is, too, right? It's like, this person's there, like, this guy is having, an issue, and they're just swearing at him, right? It just shows
It's not
how
even like, well, there's nothing we can do about it, which would already be bad enough. But it's like you said, they're swearing. They are fucking insane.
um, so, he did not provide him a medical attention. Freddy Casares Gonzalez was kicked and beaten by the officers who arrested him, and as a result, he was in extreme pain at Broadview. Despite his injuries and the pain he was in, officers at Broadview did not provide Casares Gonzalez with any medical care. And again, these are the people that caused said pain, right? And yet they're the ones that get to determine whether or not he gets to receive any relief from that as well, right? So, like, this is why a medical team is required to handle these things, because they are supposed to be, right, at the very least, right, there's at least this assumption or presumption of neutrality, right, that they will treat anybody, right, so, keeping up with the Hippocratic Oath, etc. But in this case, because it's the very officers that committed these horrific acts against him, that get to choose whether or not he gets any medical care.
Yeah.
They can just leave him there to suffer.
And if you want, I'll start 100.
Okay.
Defendants often do not provide detainees with prescription medication. In order for a detainee to receive prescription medication, their family members must first locate them at Broadview and then get into contact with ICE, which often doesn't respond to calls or emails. In order to arrange dropping off the medication. Even then, defendants' officers do not always give detainees their medication as prescribed. Prior to being detained at Broadview, Samuel Oka became sick at another detention center where he was prescribed with an ibuprofen mix to be taken every 8 hours. Once he arrived at Broadview, he had a fever and a sore throat. Broadview officers did not give him the medication for almost 24 hours until right before he left. Samuel Oka saw and heard a pregnant woman request her medications from officers, but they refused
Wait,
to provide it.
1 second. The surname is Ochoa.
Ochoa.
Mm.
Attorney Jasmine Pedreza's client was held at Broadview for over 3 days and needed his medication. She emailed and called the Chicago ERO office multiple times, but was unable to speak to anyone at ICE or Broadview. She had to contact the Mexican consulate for assistance in getting her client his medication.
Crazy. Like, can you imagine,
Yeah.
like, you have to call, right, a representative of a foreign country,
Yeah.
right, which, in order to just get medication, like, ridiculous.
Yeah, it's really bad. Attorney Luis Carhart's client required medication for high blood pressure. ICE did not give him his medication during the 4 days he was detained at Broadview, even though his family brought his prescription medication to the facility. Attorney Shelby Veselki's client required prescription medications for her pre-diabetic condition. However, during the 4 days she was detained at Broadview, ICE failed to provide her with access to her medication. Defendants' officers at Broadview failed to conduct intakes for and document detainees' medical and mental health needs, medications, medical events, and even medical emergencies. These failures impede detainees' ability to receive adequate medical care at Broadview and prevent them from receiving adequate treatment once they're transferred out of the facility. Making matters worse, defendants have doused protesters, legal observers, and journalists with pepper spray and tear gas immediately outside the facility in an attempt to quell demonstrations. These chemical agents are tracked into holding cells by people entering with chemicals on their clothes, shoes, and bodies. This has the
Which to just,
potential.
yeah, sorry, my bad.
No, no.
It talks about it itself, so please go
Yeah.
ahead.
This is the potential to further harm detainees who are not given personal protective equipment. Yeah,
Yeah, because I was about to say, like, which to keep in mind, like, if it's already hard to breathe,
it's going to be even
this makes
harder.
it even,
Yeah,
yeah.
combined, especially if you have any lung conditions as well, the potential chemicals being um involved have issues with that with your lungs in any sort of way, like you were talking about earlier. It's going
Mhm.
to be even worse. Combined with the poor physical conditions and lack of sanitation and hygiene products, the lack of medical and mental health care significantly increases the risk and spread of illness in the detained population in Broadview.
Okay, so now we're going to go on to section 6. Broadview officers abuse and mistreat the people in their custody, which again, they have all of the power, right? Like for them to be like, oh, whatever, they can say whatever they want, but they literally have the power of life and death. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. But so so yeah, I totally see what you're saying, Planet. Um, Defendants officers systematically mistreat and abuse the detainees who are in their custody. Freddy Casares Gonzalez, who was detained at Broadview for 5 days, stated that, quote, officers treat us, treated all of us like savage animals, end quote. The officers are, pardon me, officers are physically and verbally abusive of detainees. They fail, they feel, they fail to treat detainees with basic human decency and instead demean them and humiliate them, which again, even if you're literally having a heart attack or something else like a stroke, right, they will laugh at you whilst it's happening, right? Like, I mean, again, like people try to say, oh, these are reasonable. It's like, they're, what do you even call this, right? Like, I mean, it's beyond cruel, right? It's beyond these things because they're not even allowing these horrific things to happen, but making the conditions for them to happen, and then laughing at people whilst it's ongoing, right? So it's just horrible about that. Rosalio Pelayo Salgado reported that agents directed racial slurs at detainees and only gave them food and water for what they felt was good behavior. So again, now going back to the food and water, right, which we already know is very, very, inadequate. They also hurl racial slurs at you, right, which I don't even want to think about, like all of that. But it's like, yeah, it's just horrifying to think about that. But let alone, it's a transactional thing, right? It's literally a thing whether or not you will get food, right, or water. So Jack Doe was held in a cell with an elderly disabled man in his 70s who was hemiplegic.
It means he was
The
for anyone who doesn't know, it's usually what happens after a stroke, where you have weakness on one side of your body, or you're paralyzed on one side of your body. Um,
Mhm.
I knew a man who because of circumstances, he had this. It's like we had to help him. We had to help him
Right.
along.
Yeah, like I think that the term most people would probably know, at least in the United States, probably paraplegic, which is related. It's the
Yeah,
plegic part. So meaning half, so half of the
yeah.
body. The detained man helps him use the bathroom, but after 2 days of sleep deprivation, they were too tired to help anyone. So again, like they have to literally bring this man all the way to the bathroom. We don't know where he is, right? Like we don't know where possibly this toilet is in relationship to him, right? We can assume that it would have been closer to to the bathroom, but that doesn't exactly help, right? But also after just 2 days, even the people that were helping him had lost all ability to help him, right? It's like, so what does he do now? Right. So, and going back to what you said, yeah, like they require a lot of assistance precisely because of the fact they're hemiplegic. Um, The officers refused to provide assistance, and the man soiled himself. The police did not give him a change of clothes or take him to a private room. He was forced to remain in his soiled clothes for several days, which again, like this is just ludicrous. Like the fact that, the fact that because of the degrading conditions within the detention center itself means that even the people that are willing to help can't, right? Because they get so weak, right? From let alone the lights, the air, the water, the lack of water, etc., the lack of food, but also when this person who they know, right, has to be helped, they just don't help him and just let him sit there, right? Which can also cause, right, outbreaks of other things, right? Like people, like often, like will get rashes, which then can become sores, etc. Like all these different things that could happen. Um, it's very sad to, especially because again, this man is in his 70s as well. I mean, again, I don't think that it, but again, the fact that he was being helped, but then couldn't be helped anymore. It's sad to hear of this. Jack Doe, witness officers push shackled people out of the hold room and hit them. The officers grabbed people by the neck, threw people to the ground, and got on top of people to beat them up. When someone asked, quote, "We have human rights. Why are you doing this to us?" End quote. The officers took him out of the room and beat him. And again, the fact that people that they want to view as completely alien, and I mean that, and I'm using that word choicedly, right? As un-American, as un-Western, they're the ones saying, we have human rights. No one deserves to be treated this way. They are
Yeah.
the ones upholding the very concept of human rights far beyond any of these people that claim, right, that the European heritage or whatever the hell they want to claim is like innate to them, right?
Karisu says those sores can lead to infection and necrotic wound. Even this is a very serious misconduct to leave people in their own piss in care sector, and something important. It's not just piss as well. There's a chance this man also potentially shit himself. And it's like leaving in that as
Yeah.
well, which is even worse because he was
Uh,
in there for longer. Because he was in there for longer. He was in there for even
right.
longer.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you meant both the one word. Yeah, I
Yeah.
know. It's not. It's. I mean, again, like when I spoke to Envy about reading this, the reason why is because this is something that isn't reported on,
No.
right? Like this is something that because I work in international humanitarian law as well as other things and with immigration stuff too, like I was sent this, right? In order to know about this case, and I wanted to read about it, precisely because it's like, how can you even again, like I only have a physical copy of it. This is something like that's how I have it. But just how horrifying reading this entire thing has been. um yeah, majority reports sometimes talk about it, right? Yeah. And so that's why I wanted to bring up this case, because even though it's been a month and a half or so, I still just, it's, I mean, the fact that still it's only gotten worse, right? Like that's all we know. It's only gotten worse. um Also, I think speaks to just how much people um, do not care. Right?
And
Yeah,
it's also important to note this is just one facility, a single one.
yeah. One,
Um, it's not even a set of facilities with inside a state. One facility. It is
one
a,
facility
a single one.
in suburban Chicago.
Yep.
That's it. That's And again, like this just sticks out to me, and this has had since I read this the first time is like someone saying, "We have human rights. Why are you doing this to us?" The fact that the officers took him out of the room and beat him.
Yeah.
It's like, people always use this example when talking about the Soviet Union or other places that people are sort of taught to think of this. Um, to think of as being like, fascistic, totalitarian, authoritarian. It's like, well, here we have it happening to a person that most likely, right, has no reason to even be there in the first place. I mean, does not have any reason to be there for days, right? But the fact that just for asking or speaking out against, right, which are what are clearly violations of a person's human rights and human dignity, gets beaten up by this secret police force, right? It's like, so then what does that say about the organization that, and the country, right? Like, I think that's something. I got called out in Hungary, did it pre-89, I call it. Yeah, exactly, exactly. I call this stuff out. Like I've done streams on this when it comes to like like deprivations of human rights that have happened with the, having to use the Istanbul Protocol, which is to deal with like disappearances, forced disappearances and torture, etc. In Mexico, right? Like I've talked about the 43 disappeared students, right, from 2014, and it's like, etc., like other things. And it's like, this is something like people have to call this out. Like this has never been okay. And the fact that it's the immigrant, again, the person that they want to view as, you know, unable to ever be considered in many ways human, right? Because they equate, right, a citizen and a U.S. citizen and a white person with humanity, and everyone else outside of that, a differing metrics. They're the ones over here saying, why are you doing this? It's like, why are you committing this grave injustice against us if we're both human beings, right? It's very sad. This is more of
I
an escalation.
I
Hmm.
wanted to say that uh, I posted the PDF of this in the Library of Chaos in the Cathedral, and I'm about to post another things. I'm about to post it as well in my server in my little section of stuff. Just there you go.
Yeah. This is more of an escalation. No, for sure. I mean, like that's what I'm saying. Like a lot of this stuff did happen before, even under the Biden administration. Um, and under Trump, the first, right? In fact, there's a good article that I guess I can send you later, Envy, that is about like the conditions of a detention center, but the ones that are privately run, like Core Civic, which I'm sure, like if people know about this, they'll definitely know about how Core Civic is like, one of the, and it even has the federal complaints that were taken out against it. So even back then in 2021, I believe, you already had, right, these federal complaints against this private, or even under Obama, right? Exactly,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and yeah, this is done by the good guys, quote unquote, right? Right.
yeah,
It's like instead they should be asking themselves, are we the baddies? And it's like, yes, you are. um, you definitely are. Um, so, John Cerrone, uh, I don't know, for some reason I think it's Italian, but was detained inside Broadview after being shot with rubber-coated bullets. Oh yeah, Cerrone, while attending a demonstration near the facility. So again, this person is not even supposed to be detained in this facility whatsoever, right? They've turned it into a prison, right? Effectively, this is a pop-up prison, more or less, because they shot this person with rubber-coated bullets, which, by the way, doesn't make them any less lethal, right? Like when people say like, "Oh, rubber coat," it's like the difference that it makes is very minimal. Like, I mean, it's not as supposedly diffuse of violence as it is. The agent who shot him came inside and said, quote, "Where's the pussy at?" End quote, and bragged to other agents about how he shot Cerrone in the head with rubber bullets. Again, in the head. He got shot in the head with rubber bullets.
yeah.
Like,
Which isn't that also fucking against? Isn't it also you aren't supposed to shoot people in the head? It's like it's not even a thing that's supposed to be done. Like it's not even like it's allowed. Isn't that something that's already not supposed to be done?
right. like that's the whole point, is that if the excuse that they use is that it's anti-riot, right? They will use it under those conditions. But um, because they are because they are just coated with rubber, right? But they still have a metal core,
Yeah.
right? And so because of that, um, they, in essence, um, I mean, they can lead to death. And you're right. Yes, when they're fired at close range or aimed at vulnerable areas like the head or neck,
Yep.
um, they can lead to death.
Not
And in
even
fact,
just not even necessarily a death. That person could have to be taken to the hospital because of because of brain damage, because that they damaged their brain, getting shot in the head with a with getting shot with a rubber bullet, because it might not pass through you, but if it bounces off of you, it's going the speed of a bullet, which
right.
means it'll bounce off of you. A lot of force. A lot
And
of force.
again, like the coating is like 1 to 2 millimeters,
Yeah.
tiny amounts of coating. It's still going, as fast as bullets go, as you're saying, right? And another thing too is, from what I remember, and I don't know how much this data has changed because this was done in 2017, I believe, but it was done as a comprehensive study of all the ones that they had looked at from, it was like the 90s until then, until 2017. And 15%, something like that, 15% suffered like permanent disabilities because of that,
Yeah.
right? With blindness being one, like especially if you look at Chile, right? That's where they were used, and particularly shoot people in the eyes. Organs having to be removed, like their spleen or sections of their intestines, or neurological damage, like what you're talking about. Um, so yeah, like um, what you also don't, what a lot of people sometimes don't understand either, is that um, rubber coated bullets, which again still have that metal core, um, can cause a disproportionate amount of severe injuries and possibly even death, of course. But many fatalities have resulted just from head or torso impact because of, like what you mentioned earlier, right? Brain trauma, internal bleeding, and organ rupture. So again, like it doesn't even matter if it just, I mean, like, and again, the misuse, and this is something that Physicians Without Borders, Amnesty International, and Human Rights Watch, which
Yeah.
we've already spoken a little bit about, the stuff
Yeah.
that they've talked about, is that um, that while they might say, well, not everybody dies from it, it's like, well, not everyone dies necessarily from the initial exchange, from the bullet to the person, but they might die subsequently. And
Yep.
so they don't count that in their data either. Um, if that also happens, because again, if it can fracture skulls, rupture eyeballs, other things, and it's just horrifying. But the fact that they were also taunting, right? Because again, this goes back to the thing, the same people that are arresting, right, and detaining these people, including this protester who wasn't even in front of the facility, just happened to be nearby, was shot at, and then was brought in, right? Was then, them saying, the agent who shot him comes inside and he has the power to determine how this person is going to exist in this detention center for the next who knows how long, right? It's like that is something that is a complete miscarriage of justice. Like, and I mean, yeah, I feel like that's even lacking in the severity of how it is. Um, just one quick second. This was the criticism in Hungary that it blinded protesters, right? Right. Um, so, um, Claudia Guerrera Pereira reported that officers used obscenities and insults against detainees, jeered at detainees, and generally treated them with contempt, which, we definitely could see that. Um, Officers repeatedly swore at Santos Rebolledo Altamirano and told him that he is not allowed to be in the country. Whenever he asked for anything, officers simply responded that they were not supposed to be here. Imagine that. Like, you're over here asking for medical attention, and they're like, well, you're not even supposed to be in this country. In reality, I mean, in a way, by saying they're not supposed to be here, right, is that facility, right? Like, but yeah. When Rebolledo Altamirano asked an officer for his jacket because he was freezing cold in just his undershirt, the officer told him to, quote, take it like a man, end quote, and to stop acting like a child. You know, this guy is an essentially, right, like a cotton rib t-shirt, undershirt, right? And is freezing cold because they're blasting the AC. And all he's asking for is a jacket, right? Not even like, oh, them to turn off the AC or for them to whatever, right? I feel like the officer would, if you were to tell him these same things, if he felt cold, he definitely would not feel, he definitely would not treat people very well if that were to happen to him. Um, just to put that out there, right? When detainees ask for basic necessities, officers respond with threats, abuse, or contempt, and many detainees report being belittled or ignored by officers when they ask for food or water. So even if you ask for it, even if you ask for food and water, they will, treat you like shit. Essentially, like they will curse at you. They will tell you all these horrible things. Tell you that you're just supposed to take it like a man, etc. Blah blah blah. Right. So Claudia Pereira Guevara stated that after she and others were denied water for 13 hours, 13 hours of no water. So over half of the day, no water. Officers would pretend that they did not hear the requests.
Which keep in mind half a day, depending on the heat. Um, you need the water. You need the water.
Yeah. When people ask for necessities, officers would insult detainees or make light of their suffering. She saw a man who was very ill and appeared to be having a heart attack. The officers at Broadview laughed at him and made light of his medical emergency. So that's at least two cases, right?
Yeah. Yeah, which is genuinely just insane. But wait, there's more. There is no privacy at Broadview, raising serious safety concerns. Defendants intentionally deny detainees privacy. The putative class members are constantly exposed and subject to surveillance. Some of the hold rooms each have one toilet with a sink attached for all the detainees to share. Uh, up to hundreds, but even like with the lowest count, which has seemed to be around 30, obviously still absolutely insane. The toilet is out in the open. The toilet is out in the open. The other rooms have only 2 or 3 toilets, which are sometimes broken or clogged, despite holding more than 100 detainees at one time. The toilets in these rooms are separated by only a small wall that is insufficient to provide privacy. Individuals in all holding rooms are forced to urinate and defecate in front of each other while crammed in crowded holding rooms. And also, uh, what if you're trying to, what if the person next to you, sorry, what if there's a person sleeping fucking next to the toilet? What the fuck do they do? Do you just wake them up and say, hey, you gotta move for a little bit, disrupting their sleep even further? Like, what do you do? Like, what? While detainees are separated by sex, the holding rooms have large glass windows. Male detainees can see female detainees use the toilet, and female detainees can see the men. When someone's on the woman's side uses the toilet, other detainees gather around the toilet, trying to use their bodies to provide privacy. Yeah. Officers can also see the toilets inside the holding rooms and watch detainees use the bathroom. This is especially distressing for female detainees, as most of the officers are male. Defendants have placed camera throughout Broadview so they can observe detainees at their most vulnerable moments, including when they are using the toilet. This causes heightened anxiety, particularly for women at Broadview who have no idea who is watching them use the toilet or what is done with the recordings from the facility cameras. It also increases the risk of sexual abuse and mistreatment at the hands of ICE officers. Generally insane. Just. You still there? Oh, Shakespeare messaged me. Oh, I didn't even read. I didn't even see. Um, Shakespeare is no longer with us. I didn't even notice because I don't have my sounds turned on. Maybe just message. I didn't even notice at first. Let's see. How long is this? If so, if it's fairly long, I will probably ask. Um, Probably wait, and me and Shakespeare can do that another time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is gonna be pretty long, so we'll probably call it for right now. Because I do want to go over this entire. I do kind of want to go over the rest of section B, and because it's going to be 10 plus pages, um we can wait for 10 plus pages. It's going to be over like 20 pages. We can just wait for Shakespeare. We can just finish this some other time. Um so yeah, we went for around 2.5 hours, a little bit above that. So another long one. Um Before we go, I have some news. Um, Later today at around 10 p.m. EST, I am going to be starting a 24-hour stream. Uh, we're going to be doing something, but it's going to be a 24-hour stream, and yeah. So it might be an hour earlier, it might be 9 p.m. EST, but it's gonna be one of those two times. So, um, everyone who is here, thank you all, and we will continue this some other time. And I will make sure um, to note that this is a part one. Uh, I will change it to be continued so that people know that. Um, well, see you all later, and despite how horrible it was, uh, thank you all for being there.